welcome into the Pharmacist and the Photog Games, Grooves, and Grub. I am the Pharmacist Dion Spencer alongside the Photog Steve Moss. And after a week-long illness-induced hiatus on my part, we are back to talk a little bit about some sports and some music and a little food and beverage. We're going to start again with the confounding mystery of UK basketball. We bounced back with, the little victory last week that we needed to get, and we got it. And then played a spirited game against Bama, but couldn't quite get over the hump. What do you think about that?
Which one? Vandy?
Let's
the Vandy
start
game. With Vandy.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought the game changed in the second half when Pope decided to go inside.
Yeah.
Amari Williams had a phenomenal game. They also made some good defensive adjustments there at the free throw line. Vandy was getting a lot of penetration by the guards, and Kentucky finally started getting some weak side help there and cut some of those drives off. But when you talk about Amari Williams, 26 minutes. He was 6 of 6 from the field, 5 of 5 from the free throw line, 6 rebounds, 4 blocks. He ended up with 17 points. He was plus 15 for the game, and those are historic numbers.
And zero fouls.
And zero fouls.
Yeah, zero fouls.
Because that factors into a stat. But those are historic numbers. He's the first player, either NCAA or NBA, which blew my mind.
Yeah.
Since Pau Gasol.
In 2010 or 2011, something like that.
It's been 15 years to get 15 points, 4 blocks, and be perfect from the field and the free throw line while picking up 0 fouls.
Yeah, they had no answer for him, and as the season has progressed, that's kind of become the theme. There have been very few teams that have been able to do anything with him when he gets the ball down in the paint. Now, I know we like him at the post. He's a great passer. And having him distribute the ball, it causes a lot of teams a lot of problems. But we're at crunch time right now, and I like the guy in the paint using that little drop step, using that soft left hand. He really brought it in that game, and we needed him to, because the second half was Kentucky played as well, I thought, as they've played all season, both offensively and defensively.
Yeah, and for the game, not so much reliant upon the three-point shot from two-point field goal percentage, or from just regular two-point field goals. They shot 79%.
Yeah.
So just a great offensive game, especially in the second half for these guys. And when they go to Alabama, I don't think anybody had a W on the card for that. But then Kentucky races out to a 20-9 lead just right out of the gate. The first 5 minutes and 15 seconds. And then they struggle the rest of the half to score 20 points. They were up 30-18 at one point with 9:37 to go. And then here comes the substitutions.
Yeah.
And Alabama goes on an 18-2 run, takes the lead, never looks back.
Yeah, and we've talked about this, here and just you and I together. It's maddening. I get it. I understand that you want to get guys a rest, but at this point in the game, my argument is, one, with injuries, we don't have a lot of really good lineup options, and two, when you've got a team. And when you're putting it on a team like we were in that game, we were up 12 and weren't really showing any signs of slowing down. I'm like, go ahead and get a few more points on that lead before we start resting guys for a few minutes.
And I know that Mark likes to go to the bench there on that first media timeout. He's got this efficiency, this offensive efficiency rating data, that he likes to rely upon. But when you're on a roll like that, to me, you're just helping Alabama.
Yeah.
You're taking out one of your best offensive options in Amari Williams. At that point where Alabama took a lead, the only starter in the game was Otega Owe, and he was having his worst night of his Kentucky career.
Right. I mean, I don't think any of us had Owe being a completely no-show on our bingo card.
Yeah, he finished 1 for 9, and he fouled out with almost 10 minutes to go in the game.
Yeah.
And I know there, people are complaining about the officiating. But back to the substitution pattern, I see people arguing against it, arguing and saying like he's got his he's got his analytics, talking about Mark Pope. He knows what he's doing. Well, I mean, when you start subbing out all these guys and Alabama grabs a lead and you're on the road, you
got to look at the writing on the wall or the writing that's on the court.
Well, at least
right
look at the combinations that are on the floor,
Yeah.
because as I've told you before, I don't think there should be 2 of the 3 freshmen on the floor at any point.
Yeah.
Unless you're up 20.
Yeah.
And Brandon Garrison has suddenly regressed to the point where he's a liability.
Yeah. And I completely agree there.
So, any combination thereof, you're rolling the dice in my book.
Well, and as far as getting back to Pope's analytics, those analytics are fine and dandy when you don't have Jackson Robinson and Lamont Butler sitting on the bench in street clothes.
That's
so
true.
You might be able to stick with the, hey, we're going to substitute at the first media timeout when the guys coming off the bench are guys that are now starting for us because of injury.
And look, I'll give credit where credit's due. I think that I think the two freshmen from Kentucky have had to step up, and they have played well, pretty well in most spots over the last month.
Right.
Your other freshman, he has come along as well, and he's playing good defense. He's not such a liability, but he's a walking turnover. I understand you've got 3 starters, your 3 best point guards are, in street clothes.
Yeah.
It's a tough deal to swallow, but I just wish there was more attention paid to the combinations that are on the floor and the timing of the substitutions. If you're on a 20-9 run to start the game, why are we stopping this freight train?
Yeah. Yeah, let it keep rolling. I completely agree. It's just and at this point, I just don't know what we're going to see change. We'll find out if anything changes.
And Kentucky made very few defensive adjustments against Alabama. Mark Sears goes for 30, and a lot of those were in the paint, drawing fouls. Back to the officiating.
Yeah.
So. Just not a good night.
Yeah, I mean, tomorrow night we go. We're at Oklahoma, and we did see that yesterday. I think Jackson and Lamont both saw some limited, modified practice time.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to.
That means
I don't think they'll be playing against Oklahoma. No. And we're recording this on a Tuesday night. Kentucky plays at Oklahoma on Wednesday.
Right.
But Pope did hint during his radio call-in show on Monday night that both of those guys have been practicing, and I mean, if you read the tea leaves, they will be back at some point. He just wants to make sure they're at a point where, if they do get bumped or, the shoulder or the wrist gets bumped, then they can overcome it. So.
Yeah, I feel like you're much more likely to see him against Auburn on Saturday, against the number 1 team in the country. When they come to Lexington, that shapes up, you hope, to be a good day for Kentucky to, take advantage of the home court and get the job done. You'd like to think going to Oklahoma tomorrow we could beat them. They just beat number 24 Mississippi State, but prior to that they had lost 5 in a row. So they're not a great basketball team, but how many times have we said that this season?
Right. And at this point of the season, you're playing for seeding, and the games become hyper important because all eyes are on seeding. Oklahoma is playing for its tournament life at this point, and there have been some losses that Kentucky can overcome because the selection committee has said we take into account your injuries and that kind of stuff. So, but you certainly want to control your own destiny here. You know, Kentucky needs to go get a win and make sure that there's no question when it comes to that seed line, because like right now, Joe Lunardi has them, I think, as the last 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, and Ken Palm has them as an 8 seed right now in the SEC tournament, which means they would play on a Thursday.
Right.
At least they're not playing on a Wednesday right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
But
the thing.
that could all change if you lose at Oklahoma, you get beat by Auburn, and then you
lose at Missouri.
Yeah, you've still got to go to Missouri, and they've proven that they're pretty good this year.
They're playing well. So yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if it was Lunardi's bracketology I saw that had Kentucky in the same. The region was tough. It was going to be.
I think they had Florida in there.
Yeah, Florida was in there. I think there was one more SEC team.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Gonzaga was in that region. There were several teams that we've already played. 1 or 2 that we've lost to. I think Ohio State was in that predicted.
I'd like to get Ohio State again.
Yeah.
I think Kentucky. Yeah. I think Kentucky would like to get them again.
Yeah, I think you're right there. But yeah, who knows? Again, that's been the theme of this season, consistently inconsistent, and I guess we'll just keep going with it.
Some of the cool things that I have seen, especially Ken Palm. I like Ken Palm because you talk about crunching numbers. It's all efficiency-based basketball. And since 2001, the national champion has come from their top 21 offensive efficiency teams pre-tournament, and they're a mix of their top 21 offense and their top 31 defensive teams. So as it stands today, the teams that are in each one of those categories, top 21 offense, top 31 defense, would be Michigan, Purdue, Houston, Iowa State, Michigan State somehow, but Duke, Auburn, Florida, and Arizona. So your national champion could come from that group of teams there.
I mean, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, Duke's playing really well right now.
And there was one other one. The national champion since what year was it? I'm trying to remember. But the week 6 of the AP poll, the national champion, I believe, for the last at least 10 years has come from the week 6 of the AP top 10, top 12 team from the AP poll in week 6. So again, you're talking about Tennessee, Auburn, Iowa State, Duke, Kentucky. They were ranked in the top 12 that week. Marquette and Alabama.
So you're saying there's a chance.
I mean, according to that, statistically, there's a chance.
I'm going to latch on to that.
But the emphasis for me here is that there's so many SEC schools.
Yeah.
I mean, are we talking about football here or are we talking about basketball?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Pretty crazy.
This is, they're talking about this potentially being the greatest basketball league
ever
since there was an ACC.
Yeah, I want to say it was like
early 90s,
or something like that.
But even that, I just don't know that it was as good top to bottom as
this league is pretty good.
Yeah, it's just nuts. But and the credit to the SEC, because I think it was a few years ago when the commissioner made that a point of emphasis that they wanted to see good coaches come into this league and turn some of these schools around. And now, damn, everybody's got a good coach, and they're all playing
well. And Sankey went out and hired some people from the old Big East who helped create that conference and turned it into a powerhouse solely for trying to raise the level of basketball in the SEC. And here we are. Yeah, I think the number one thing, though, that the SEC has going for it is that these schools are not afraid to spend money, and the NIL in the SEC is just crazy.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of money out there, and the parity is, we saw the graphic this week that there were 6 teams
from the preseason top 10, I think 5, half of them.
Yeah, that are
including number 1 Kansas that are not in the top 25.
Yeah, not ranked now.
Right.
It was Kansas, UConn, Gonzaga, North Carolina.
That's right.
I'm drawing a blank on the others, but
Yeah,
you
I had it
get the
written down.
idea. It was the
Baylor.
powerhouses. Baylor.
Baylor
Yeah.
was the other one.
Yeah, and the other graphic we saw this week was just for giggles. Everybody before the season we were shooting for Hurley or Scott Drew, and they compared
Both of them combined.
their guys their records against Pope's record, and Pope has done.
He eclipsed both of them.
He has done more
together.
with less.
Mm-hmm.
He's played a much tougher schedule. He's done it with exactly 0 returning points from last season, as opposed to those guys.
Right.
Again, I don't want us to flame out first weekend of the NCAA tournament, but man, it's been a ride, that's for sure. So I can't complain too much about what Pope has been able to accomplish with what I keep calling just a ragtag assembly of players, and they've stepped up and I think played to the best of their abilities.
I agree with you. I think they have. I've been pleasantly surprised, and some of the texts I send to you, I really give him a hard time about some of that stuff, but the main thing is just the substitution for me.
Yeah.
The substitution patterns, the time of the substitutions, and who's on the floor together and for however long. Yeah. I just, Brandon Garrison, I wrote down a bunch of his numbers tonight, just taking a deep dive. Before conference play, he obviously had a benchmark of numbers, his points per game and his rebounding per game, and they've dropped significantly since conference play, and he is trending downward at a rapid pace. In his in conference play alone, he's only had 4 games out of 14 where he's been in the plus column, in the plus minus, and people poo-poo that whole stat, but it is an indication of what your team is doing while you're on the court.
Yeah.
So I just feel like you probably could shave a couple of minutes off of his playing time and keep Williams out there, because it's pretty obvious. If Janai Broome is not in the SEC right now, I would be saying that Amari Williams would be a viable candidate for Player of the Year in the league.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean we need him on the floor. We need to squeeze more minutes out of him. I'm like you. We need 32, 33 minutes because he's not been in any sort of foul trouble for the last good grief month and a half at least.
Yeah, I think he's figuring out finally how to stay on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah. So we just need to maybe call Coach Pope and be like, look, just keep Amari on the floor. That we figured it out. But all right, we'll have more to talk about UK basketball, I'm sure, next week. Hopefully an upset overall.
Yeah, we'll have 2 games. Hopefully it's not two L's.
Yeah. I think we're gonna. I saw one national media outlet today. They picked Kentucky to upset Auburn on Saturday.
Wow.
So maybe they know something we don't. But we'll shift gears a little bit and talk. I'm gonna kind of let you take the lead a little bit on this since you've got the inside scoop. But you got to do a little UK football today, bringing that back.
Yeah, Mark Stoops had a press conference today talking about his 31 newcomers who enroll early. So these are basically 31 transfers out of the portal. And he bragged on these guys, especially the offensive linemen. And we also got to talk to these guys, all 31 of them. We didn't talk to all 31 of them, but they were all available. And I will tell you, the offensive linemen are huge.
That's good.
And my favorite is Shiaz Pete, who is a transfer from New Mexico State, and he is a Navajo. He's from the Navajo Indian tribe, and he is a wonderful person. Just talking to him, a great interview, and I've never heard anybody call Mark Stoops this, but Pete called Mark Stoops a statesman. And the reason he called him a statesman was because somebody had asked him, you know, his transfer got in just at literally at the 11th hour, and I don't even think a lot of us even knew.
Yeah, I hadn't heard the name.
He's 6'8", 321.
Jeez.
So he's a big boy. But he was asked, you know, was this the plan all along to get it in at the last minute? You know, what about the other schools who? And he basically said that Mark Stoops is a man of his word. He's a player's coach, and then he called him a statesman.
Interesting.
So
6'8".
he is 6'8". He's listed at 6'8", 321.
He's offensive line.
Yeah, and
is our quarterback going to be able to see over him?
Well, we talked to him today too. We talked to Zach Calzada, the transfer from Incarnate Word, but prior to that, he was Auburn and Texas A&M.
He did. He's played some big boy football.
He's played some big boy football. He's 24. He's 24 years old. He's not built nearly like his previous predecessors. You know, he's a little slight, but you know, he's watching him on huddle film. He seems like he, you know, can handle it.
He's got a reputation for delivering the football with some accuracy.
Okay. So we talked to him, Zach Calzada. We also talked to the gunslinger from Pennsylvania, Stone Saunders, the other quarterback who is a true freshman. So he's not really part of he was one of the 31, but he's not a transfer. So, but he broke every big name quarterback in the NFL and in you know, Pro Football Hall of Fame. He broke all those Pennsylvania records that were held by, you know, Montana and Dan Marino and guys like that. And he just basically said that he's not afraid to come in and compete for a job, even though he called him a 35-year-old. But he knew that, you know, Calzada was there to start. But we talked to a handful of the linemen. Talked to a linebacker, Sam Green, who transferred in from Southern Cal. Who basically, all these guys to a man almost said the same thing. They're here because of Mark Stoops, which is interesting.
That's good. I mean, you know, I joked way back, you know, when football season was wrapping up, you know, year after year, every summer I get all excited about the new guys coming in and you get me pumped up. And, you know, I don't want to fall for that again, but I'm hoping I'm wrong. You know,
well, one of the things that Stoops, the very last question Dick Gabriel asked was, Mark, you know, given the landscape of college football with the NIL, you're now paying players. You know, you've got to go out and raise money to pay the players. And then you've got the transfer portal. You've got all these guys who go into the portal. And, you know, what Rick Pitino even came out earlier this week said, I'm not recruiting freshmen. I'm going straight to the portal. Yeah. I mean, it's that kind of thing. You know, Dick asked him, said, given all that, are you having fun? And I was pleasantly surprised that Stoops said, I still enjoy coaching. I'm enjoying it as much as I ever have. And then he doubled down and he said, we are motivated this year to fix things that happened last year, and that's all on me.
Yeah, I thought his audio, I think he knows that they got to get something done this year.
Right.
They got to have a drastic improvement this season over last couple seasons. So,
well, in fact, we have Stoops, so let's take a listen now.
Are you still enjoying this as much as you always have?
I enjoy it right now as much as I ever have, and I think it would speak. You know, maybe I shouldn't say it was good. It is what it is, right? Last year it was, you know, it was not what I wanted. It was not what anybody wanted. That falls squarely on me, you know. And I know people, oh, you get tired. You know, there's a lot of things that you have to adapt to, and you know, and one way or another, it ties back directly to me. And, you know, so, but it is a big organization. It's a big department, you know, and there's a lot of areas that we have to all adapt to, and, you know, do it at a high level. And, you know, so with that being said, with the situation the way it was, like, I could not be more energized and focused and determined to get this thing back and to, keep growing the program like we once did, as good as anybody with the sustained success that we had for a long period of time. That is hard to do in our league. And we're highly motivated to get back on track and to get going. And I think there's great energy and great juice in our building. I like the focus and the energy of our staff. I think we had to be very strategic in defining exactly what we want to do, and and then teaching that to the players and having them. I like the way they've accepted that. The way they've accepted the coaching. They understand very clearly what's expected of them. They're working very hard, and it feels very good. Nobody likes the year that we had, but I like where we're at right now, and we're aiming to push forward and aim for the future. And it's fun coming in early in the spring and attacking the day and getting around these players and getting them better.
Yeah, so I mean, the guy sounds like he's saying what he needs to say. Obviously,
That's true. That's true.
Because I don't think the fans are going to stand for much less. They need to be better this year.
I think he knows that he's lost a part of the fan base. Yeah. So I think he knows he's got to make some rights. Interesting little things that he said today, just here and there. He said he talked to his strength and conditioning people, and he said, over the last couple of years, we haven't done a good job there. Yeah. He said our number one priority is to protect our players from getting injuries, but he said I told our strength and conditioning people we got to push it harder. So that was good to hear because I've said here before that I've got a friend who works in that building and said just look at their bodies; they haven't changed their bodies.
Yeah.
And they weren't in good shape.
You could see that back 4, 5, 6 years ago. You would see guys come in, and by the time they left,
right,
they were different physical specimens. And those guys a lot of them are still playing on Sundays in the NFL now.
Yeah.
So
and Stoops also kind of hinted around that he's changed up some things around the building, and the building being the Joe Kraft facility there, where they work out. So yeah, he said a bunch of things, and it all sounds great. Of course, none of it's going to matter unless they improve on their 4 wins from last year, which was the worst season they've had since his first.
Yeah, they definitely need to win some football games.
Yeah,
and there's no other way to.
Well, and you were talking about guys in the NFL. One other thing going on this weekend is the NFL Combine, and Kentucky has 4 guys up there: Eli Cox, Dumas Johnson, Walker, and Hairston are there. And I was looking back on the last few drafts. Stoops' record kind of reads like Calipari. He's had 43 players drafted since he got here.
Yeah.
34 of them just within the last 7 years, which is pretty crazy to think about.
Yeah.
So they're looking to extend their streak of 5 straight years where they've had multiple draft picks. So, the guy either is recruiting good talent or he's developing good talent.
Yeah, there's no doubt Kentucky has got a handful of guys in the NFL that have been difference makers. And I mean, some of them have landed themselves some pretty nice contracts over the years. So
yeah,
obviously, like you said, they're picking up some good talent, and they're able to evaluate it and develop it. So hopefully, we've got some guys 6'8", 300 plus who can help us make a difference.
Well, here I'll just read to you the offensive linemen: 6'7", 310, 6'5", 301, 6'7", 305, 6'8", 321. That's our guy Pete. 6'6", 342, 6'6", 335, 6'4", 291. So those are the offensive linemen. And they took, 6 or 7 of those guys. And the other thing he said was, we're not hanging our hat, meaning money. We're not hanging our hat on one person.
Right.
And that's been the case with a quarterback or a receiver, a skill player. So this year, I think what they're trying to do is, we had talked about this before, if the NFL model is it all starts up front, either on offense or defense, why isn't Kentucky following that model?
Right.
Where you're paying, some of your best money for guys up front. So
Yeah, pay some decent money to do some good athletes who are maybe a little hungry and want to get out there and
well, you
try
got to
improve
protect your
themselves.
quarterback.
Yeah. So
And you got to get pressure on the other guy.
So it'll be interesting to watch,
Right.
what happens over the next few months during spring practice and that kind of thing. Hopefully the guys get trending in the right direction.
Hope so.
What else sports-wise? I only had we've kind of been keeping an eye on women's basketball. They lost kind of a tough one to LSU the other day. They came out and much like the men, they had it rolling in the first half.
Right.
And then it wasn't necessarily substitution issues that got them, but they came out in the third quarter and just laid an
flat.
egg
Yeah, they looked very
against
flat.
LSU. And, that's why LSU's
Maybe
only
they
lost a couple
maybe they
games.
all looked at Kim Mulkey and they realized who they're facing.
I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Well,
they struggled.
yeah.
In the third quarter.
The good news is, if there's we want to flip that pancake, you've got one more opportunity to see Georgia Amoore play
Yeah.
in Lexington.
Yeah, that's Thursday night.
Well, actually, you might have two, because they likely would host an NCAA opening round.
Yeah.
But I have not seen her in person. So, I've seen her obviously on TV, and she's just a tremendous player. She makes up for her lack of size and uber athleticism with just complete smarts.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since Kentucky men or women have had a guard out there who is just an extension of the coach.
Well, and
she's coaching Kenny Brooks.
and prior to, we didn't do a show last week, like I said, because I was sick. But that week before that, and I had intended to talk about this, she hit a milestone. She hit her 2,300 points and over 800 assists. She became only the third player ever. Think about
Men
that
or
for a
women,
second.
right?
I think it's men or women.
Men or women.
I know it's definitely in women. The third player in women's basketball to have at least 2,300 points and 800 assists. The only two others who have done it are Caitlin Clark and Sabrina Ionescu.
Yeah.
That's pretty lofty company.
Yeah.
And, I hate the fact that Georgia's not about 3 or 4 inches taller.
Yeah.
The fact that she is pretty small, I think will hurt her down the road.
Yeah,
but-
I don't know how tall Sabrina is, but she obviously is she's probably 5 or 6 years into her pro career.
Yeah.
I think Georgia's going to play in the WNBA. It's going to take a good fit for her to be out on the court, but Reed Shepherd surprised everybody.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, if I still think Reed has just had the misfortune of being on a team that doesn't need him to be on the court and do well.
that's true.
That's the bad part. When he gets on the floor, he usually makes something happen in the few minutes that he's out there. So, anyway, the other one interesting note, and I'll be watching later tonight, is tonight's the first matchup between the Lakers and the Mavericks, and of course, AD hurt. He's not going to be in there, but I don't know what the over-under is on points for Luka tonight.
I didn't look.
If he scores less than 35, I'm going to be disappointed.
I would think that this will be the one game where LeBron is going to go out of his way to make sure that
LeBron's going
Luka,
he's going to have 8 points and 30 assists tonight.
well, and probably pick up 2 or 3 offensive fouls from trying to set a screen.
Yeah.
I would think Luka is going to benefit from LeBron being 6'8" and 240 tonight.
I'm gonna. That game doesn't come on till 10 o'clock our time here tonight, but I'm gonna sit up and watch that one. I'm off tomorrow, so I'm gonna watch and see what happens. I want
to see who picks up Luka, for the Mavericks, because Kyrie can't take him.
No,
So-
I just think Luka's going to carry a grudge on this one, and it's going to be that way. I think for a while.
Yeah.
I think he's going to have it out to prove them wrong, and he's going to make them pay for it. So we'll see. All right,
Put your money on Luca.
Enough sports. We'll move on to some music. And again, the sickness held us out, so we didn't get to talk about it last week, so we're going to talk about it tonight. A couple weekends ago, on a whim, last-minute thing, I decided to pick up a couple tickets to go see Herb Alpert, the trumpet legend. He was in Lexington playing at a real small venue, the Lexington Opera House. And I grabbed a couple really cheap tickets, and Steve and I went to check out that show.
I didn't even know he was still playing.
Yeah,
because he's how old?
He turns 90 next month, less than a month now.
He doesn't look 90.
When this show was announced months ago, I saw it and I thought, you know what? I need to go see him. I feel like I should go see him because there aren't many of those jazz legends left, especially not that age. It's pretty much Herb Alpert and Herbie Hancock. Herbie Hancock's about 90, and he's still out there touring, and looks like he's about 65. Wow. And same thing for Herb Alpert. I mean, the guy jogged onto the stage.
I know
at the Opera House,
and his wife came out and joined him.
His wife came out and sang. They've been married for what
50
years, a little over 50 years.
They were married in the early 70s,
and to say that we were blown away by this show that just doesn't even do it justice. I mean, you could probably say, "Oh, I vaguely know the name," but I guarantee you, I could take even just the most fringe music fan and sit them down, and they're going to be like, "Oh, wait, I've heard that song."
Yeah,
before.
that was on a bubblegum commercial,
and then that was on a game show.
That was in a movie.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. That one was in a movie. That was in a. Yeah.
The number of hits that he put together is incredible, and he's of course famous for Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, and they broke up like in the mid to late '60s, I guess, late '60s, and he just last year decided, I'm going to go out back on tour with a new version of the Tijuana Brass to celebrate what is now the 60th anniversary of the release of that album, which is mind-boggling. Or the album I'm referring to is the Whipped Cream and Other Delights. And if you probably, even if you're not necessarily a music fan, you probably know that cover. It's got a lady on the front who's covered in what looks to be whipped cream.
Of course, he told us it was shaving cream.
Shaving cream, yeah, because the whipped cream is going to melt under the hot lights. But anyway, just incredible. The talent he had on stage with him, too. That band was tight.
They were good.
Yeah, they were very good. They had a mixture of, had a really young secondary trumpet player. At least he appeared young from where we were sitting.
Yeah, he couldn't have been more than 24 or 5.
Yeah, he looked very young. Had a bass player that was just throwing it down. This guy was
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka, so
and he was awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. But we just kept sitting there saying to ourselves, of course, Herb Alpert is the A of A&M Records,
right?
Which spawned. I looked up earlier today. Actually, there's no less than like 30 auxiliary record labels that were offshoots of A&M Records. But I mean, the guy and his partner sold A&M in the late 80s, I think. Mid to late 80s. I can't remember which.
Herb Alpert is worth nearly $1 billion.
Yeah, with a B as in boy, $1 billion.
He's worth nearly $1 billion.
And he's out here touring
at 90.
Playing a 1,000-seat, opera house. So that tells you the guy's doing it for the love of the music. Yeah. And he seemed to be just truly enjoying himself. I mean, he told a lot of stories in between the songs, a little bit of background, and they had a really cool setup on the stage with screens and played so many old videos of, I don't know if they were like movies or from TV shows, but he was a really good looking guy in the 60s. Very handsome.
Yeah.
And so,
guy.
I mean, I can see why he was a commodity.
Yeah.
And
plus, and I told you while I was sitting there, I felt like just listening, you could close your eyes and it felt like you were listening to the soundtrack of a bunch of old Westerns.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And
it was, there, obviously he has a dozen or so hits that you would recognize instantly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like Rise. Everybody's heard Rise.
78, 79.
Yeah.
It was a much more contemporary, had a much more modern
That's when he dropped
kind of feel.
the Tijuana brass, and
Right.
it was, he was.
Heavy bass line, a little funk.
Yep.
But he's the only. He had 5 #1 albums. He's released like 30 or 40, but
They're everywhere out there.
he had 5 #1 albums. The only artist to go #1 as a vocalist with a song called "This Guy's in Love with You" in 1968, and then as an instrumentalist with Rise in 1979.
That's cool.
So the only person who's ever done that, gone #1 with both. In
That's cool.
65, when Whipped Cream and Other Delights came out, it went #1 in 1966. He outsold the Beatles, the Stones, and Sinatra, who
There
at
you
the
go.
time was. So I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that he's, like you said, he's worth what he's worth. He by his own admission, he's gets up in the mornings and he's a sculptor, he's a painter. He doesn't need to be out touring.
Well, and even at 90, he's proving that you set your mind to that and you're able to do it. He doesn't let the grass grow under his feet for sure.
Yeah. It was pretty impressive. I mean,
was
needless
very
to say, I'm totally, excited about the fact that we made the decision to go check that out, because that was a like you said to me, that was a show that you didn't know you needed to see.
That's right.
But when you saw it, you're like, man, I'm glad I saw that. So, good show. But last night we went to see the Becoming Led Zeppelin documentary, movie, whatever you want to call it. What did you think about that?
It was good. I mean, I learned a couple of things last night that I didn't know. Of course, I've listened to a couple of audiobooks about them, and I've also seen that other dreadful movie that they put out, which was just awful. But the song remains the same.
Yeah.
But I didn't know, first of all, that that Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones played on Goldfinger, the soundtrack to Goldfinger.
Yeah.
And on the title song.
Yeah.
I didn't know they played on that.
Yeah, I didn't
That's
either.
nuts.
That was new to me. I knew that.
But they got their start. Well, I should say Jimmy and John Paul got their start as studio musicians, and that's what they did from the time like both of them were teenagers.
Yeah.
So when they all got together, they were accomplished players.
Yeah, and the thing is,
which is just crazy because they were 20 years old, 21 years old.
Yeah, Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones were making what at the time was considered a very good living.
Yes.
as studio players, and they were both very young.
Yeah.
They were in their early 20s, because Jimmy was a little bit older than Robert Plant and John Bonham when Led Zeppelin got started. But
the other thing is, the other things that stood out were, the old movies and video that whomever dug up. I had never seen like the concert, the live concert, the last one. What were
that was a pop festival from. I'm drawing a blank if that was the one in Texas or if that was
and then the other one were all their families. Like their first big
at Royal Albert.
Yeah,
Hall.
there you go.
Yeah, at Royal Albert Hall. That one was big. I'd never seen that video. I hadn't seen the video of their first tour when they were technically still touring as the Yardbirds, from Denmark. Which that whole and this was I learned, like you said, from audiobooks, but when you look at what happened when the Yardbirds kind of fell apart, Jimmy Page was left with, they basically left him with the name and the music, and then they also left him with, oh, by the way, you're on the hook for these shows in Denmark and somewhere else. He was under contract to go do concerts. So he basically recruited. He went after one singer and couldn't get him. Went after another drummer and couldn't get him.
Right.
But the first singer that he wanted said, "Hey, you should go listen to this guy." It turned out to be
and
Robert
John Paul
Plant.
Jones called him.
Yeah, and John Paul Jones
And
heard that Jimmy was putting a band together, and literally, I jotted this down. Their first rehearsal with those 4 guys was on August the 19th, 1968. Jimmy,
Okay.
Robert, John Paul, and John Bonham.
So August, September.
August 19th, 1968. They had
September,
their
October,
very
November,
first
December.
They had their very first studio session to start recording the first album September 25th. So a month and 6 days.
That's just how good they really are.
They went into the studio. Now, you did have the benefit of Jimmy Page and John Paul, who knew their way around the studio, how to make things happen.
Sure.
But it was totally self-financed, so they weren't on the hook to any record
Well, I was
companies.
going to say that was another thing I didn't know was that Jimmy's brilliance as a business person,
Yeah.
where he mixed all the music and had the first album done
Yeah.
and then presented it to Atlantic.
Yeah.
And as he said, we don't owe them anything.
Yeah.
They either want to buy this album and sell it on the Atlantic record label or they don't.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Well, and that's the other thing that makes that timetable so ridiculous. First rehearsal, August 19th. First time in the studio, September 25th. In between that is when they went to Denmark and played concerts
Yeah.
as a new band. And basically, they said that's the reason they were able to record the album so quickly. They spent 36 hours total in the studio on Led Zeppelin 1. And Jimmy Page said that was because we knew the material from the concerts. So they had it ready to go, and they went in and just did their
Knocked
thing.
it out.
That's just insane to me.
Yeah.
What they were able to do in that short period of time.
and the deeper dives that you take on this band, again, we both listened to audiobooks. I've listened to the Led Zeppelin autobiography. It's, I don't know, 30 hours.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm in the car so much, it was no big deal. And just then seeing this documentary and the video and the interviews with all the guys just backing up everything, it just, I mean, it lends so much credibility to the notion that they are the greatest rock band ever.
Geniuses.
And yeah, musically, sonically, they were incredible.
Yeah. What Jimmy Page was able to hear or envision in his head and then be able to get that on
Get the
on
sounds.
tape with the technology they had in 1968 is just
Well,
absurd.
And as I was telling you on the drive home last night, 68, 69, just right around there, 1970, you're talking about 55 years. And the music still stands up.
Yeah.
It still stands up.
Yeah. I mean, I joke that
It's
there's
insane.
just, I can't come up with a single band from the last 10, 15 years for sure. I think you have to go back. Well, and even at this point, they're already old because I can remember sitting in my car as a 17-year-old listening to Metallica's Master of Puppets. And when I bought my turntable 4 years ago, I went out for one of the first albums I bought was the Black Album, Master of Puppet or Metallica's Black Album. And, I thought this is kind of crazy that at this point I'm, 50 years old listening to a band that I was listening to when I was 17. And Metallica is one of the few over the last 20, 25 years even that I feel like their music is going to kind of, you might still be hearing about them. But Zeppelin is definitely, you can introduce people to Zeppelin now and they're just blown away.
Well, Zeppelin never sold out for radio airplay. That was another thing that they mentioned in the movie. Jimmy was like, I do not want to make singles.
Yeah.
We are an album band.
Yeah.
And, I mean,
He basically forced their hand in that if you want to listen to us on the radio, you're either going to play the whole side or you're going to play a 7-minute version of Stairway to Heaven or whatever, and that's what ended up happening. Pretty incredible.
so the documentary was 2 hours long, and it only goes through Led Zeppelin 2, that album,
Yeah.
which, we both were like, well, what happened to all the rest?
Yeah.
And you were saying like, well, maybe that opens it up for a second documentary.
Yeah.
And I talked to a buddy of mine who went to see Billy Gibbons with us, and he's like, well, the title of the documentary is Becoming Led Zeppelin, so maybe that's where it ends.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think, I'm curious about the timing of it all. Why now?
Yeah.
2025. Maybe you'll see a resurgence again with these guys. Maybe there is a part 2 coming out. Maybe it's already done.
Yeah. Who knows?
Netflix is getting ready to release a documentary series on them. So,
And like I said, I would love to see the
all
Netflix.
they need to do is sell more albums, you know?
Yeah, exactly. What we saw last night, it was interviews with 3 living members and some really cool, never before heard audio of
John
Bonham, who never did
Probably 'cause he was
video
never sober.
interviews, right? So I'm kind of hoping that the Netflix documentary might be a little less sanitized and
A little more raw.
yeah, show me a little bit more of the
drug
legendary.
use.
I mean, their manager was famous for carrying around what they said was basically a duffel bag full of cocaine, along with another duffel
The
bag
cash.
full of cash. So, that's just legendary.
Yeah.
And how Bonham was the only one who didn't survive is kind of crazy to me. But I've been a fan. I started listening to Zeppelin. Why? I don't know, but I started listening to them when I was in middle school, because I was the biggest nerd ever, and for some reason I listened to Zeppelin and Judas Priest and Iron Maiden when I was 12.
I don't know how or why I came on to Zeppelin late, but as I've told you before, I didn't listen to them when I was in high school, which would have been the late 70s, early 80s, and everybody was listening to them. Right. I was just like, it's too hard, and I don't know.
Yeah.
The songs are too long. It's just long and drawn out. But then, as you get older and you start listening to it and you start taking a deeper dive into some of these groups, it's like, what was I thinking?
Yeah, you realize how incredible they are.
They in my book, are the greatest rock band. Yeah. Some people will argue the Stones, but I think these guys, just given the screw you, we're doing it our way, and this is the music we're putting out, I think they're the best.
Yeah, I mean, I think Plant. I think Zeppelin is the greatest rock band of all time. I would probably call it a tie between Robert Plant and Freddie Mercury as greatest frontmen of all time. And I'd bump Queen ahead of the Stones as far as if you're looking at
musicality and all that
greatest
stuff.
Bands of all time. Just.
Did I tell you I saw Queen?
Yeah, I know. Good grief. Yeah, rub that in. Well, you're older than me, so
that's true.
Go. All right.
It was a good documentary. I hope to see more.
Yeah. I'm glad we saw it on a big screen too.
Yeah.
I tend to sit and wait for things to come on at home where I can just stream them here in the Pharmacist.
I mean, it's loud in here.
Yeah.
But in that theater, it was loud.
Yeah, it was
good and loud.
Sounded good. And I would have been fine with it even louder than they had it. So we didn't see it in IMAX, which it was available in IMAX a few weeks ago. Might have been kind of cool to see that. But anyway, I'm glad we saw it the way we saw it.
Likewise.
But we also did a little record dive.
Oh yeah,
a week and a half or so ago, and hit
almost 9,000 steps. We did a little record dive.
Yeah, we did a little walking that day. We hit a lot of places. We both picked up some good stuff. Mm-hmm. You grabbed a Judas Priest album that I had, but I was jealous that you found it. I thought that was kind of cool.
I remember when that album came out, Screaming for Vengeance. I remember when that album came out. It's probably their best to date.
Yeah.
That and British Steel. Yeah. But I was never really a big Priest fan. I think I told you I saw them open for Kiss. Rob Halford came out on a big-ass Harley Davidson.
Yeah.
Which is appropriate for the metal god.
Yeah.
But that album is wall-to-wall bangers.
Yeah, it's great.
And when I saw it for like $6, I'm like,
that's a steal.
Yeah,
that's an absolute
I'm good
steal.
with that.
Yeah, you grabbed that, and the other cool find you got was the Pearl Jam.
So I have Vitology on CD, but I don't have it on vinyl. And we were at our last location.
It was one of the last few, yeah.
We went to 5. Well, we went to 4 Peddlers Malls, and then we went to one.
It was basically the same thing.
Yeah, it was. It
called
was an
something
antique.
else, yeah.
It was an antique store, and they had a lot of vinyl in there. But yeah, so this whoever this person was that had this bin of vinyl, he had, I think, 2 copies of Vitology, and they were still in the shrink wrap. There was just a little nick on the top of both of the album covers where it looked like maybe it had been dropped,
Yeah.
or somebody had hit it or scraped it, and it just barely ripped it open. And he wanted $21.
Yeah, you got that set for
So
$21.
I got it for $21. It's never been opened.
Yeah.
And I still haven't opened it and listened to it yet. I'm working my way through that whole stack of stuff I bought. But what did you tell me that you looked it up?
I actually saw a used copy of. I mean, what you got was a reissue copy, which I don't get hung up on whether it's a reissue, whether it's an original.
OG.
To me, if it's good at a good price, I'm going to buy it. But I did see a very early copy, if not an OG copy, this week go for about $80.
Yeah.
And I hazard to guess that yours is probably in better shape. Obviously,
Yeah, the only
since
thing
it's
wrong with
sealed.
it is on the
The seam is
Yeah.
basically the top of the covers.
That's
is
right.
a little bit split. And I still kind of kick myself because that same vendor had a Grateful Dead 5 album box
set.
for like $80 sealed, and I just didn't buy it. That was really dumb. But that's how it goes. But we did.
I
we
walked
both,
out
we
of there
both
with
picked up some
11.
good stuff. Yeah, I found 7 or 8 that day, and actually,
day.
you found one for me that I was kind of excited to get. Mentioning Queen, and I've listened to several audiobooks about Queen and all that, and I knew that Freddie Mercury was a huge opera fan, which is obvious given Bohemian Rhapsody, but he was taken to the opera in London at some point to see Luciano Pavarotti, and he was fascinated by that. But there was a co-star that night, a mezzo-soprano named Montserrat Caballé, and once she came on stage and sang, Freddie Mercury
smitten.
basically lost his mind.
He was smitten.
He told his management group after the fact, he said, I must record with her. And so eventually he did. And they recorded an album together that the main song was called Barcelona, and that was the official song of the Olympics in 1992. The original plan was for Freddie Mercury and Caballé to sing Barcelona at the opening ceremonies. Obviously, Freddie Mercury passed away before that could happen. But anyway, while we're digging through crates, Steve pulls out this album, says, here's a Freddie Mercury. And I said, well, if you don't want that, I want that. And it was a sealed copy of it's really, really cool issue because when they originally recorded that album, they did it only with a keyboard. It was Freddie, a keyboard, and Montserrat Caballé. This issue, they always felt like it needed to have the full orchestral arrangement behind it. But Freddie was too nervous. He said that he was quoted as saying that he was already stepping out of his comfort zone by singing with her, that he thought it would be too much pressure to sing with a full orchestra. And so they didn't do it that way. Well, on this reissue, they remixed it with a full orchestra behind it, and it's pretty amazing. And of course, you got to be an opera fan, which I am. Yeah, great find. I mean, I think that album was about $10, and I couldn't be happier with that one. So found some good stuff there. And another cool album that I picked up last week, grabbed it at Pops in Lexington on the advice of one of the guys there, Tyler, the Werewolf of Loudon on Instagram. He's one of my favorite dudes. But he said, hey, man, you need to buy this album. And it's called Dyke and the Blazers. And I had no idea what I was buying. He just said, do you like James Brown? And I said, yep. And so he said, then you need to buy this. He said, if you don't like it, bring it back. I'll give you your money back.
Wow.
But it's
that guarantee?
Yeah, it's a double album of James Brown-esque soul funk, just awesomeness. So yeah, that was cool. That was a couple of my best finds last week. So, but yeah, I mean, I grabbed some John Lee Hooker that was awesome. Added another one to the Kiss collection that much to my friends' chagrin that they who can't believe Kiss. Steve still doesn't believe that I collect Kiss past a certain point. I'm just gonna
refuse.
I'm just gonna end up buying them all. I'm gonna buy all of them. But yeah, got some Ike and Tina. So some good stuff. But anyway,
left a couple of Ike and Tina's laying too.
Yeah, we left some stuff. Yeah, but try to.
It was a good day. It was a good day. It was
fun.
Yeah. We traversed most of southwest Louisville and made our way over into across the river into
Clarksville.
Clarksville,
Indiana. And hit some spots. So good times. There's still a few things to find out there, but it's getting tougher and tougher to find some real gems at the peddlers malls, just because people are out there doing the same thing. We're out there digging to find stuff to play. Unfortunately, everybody else is digging to resell, which
you think that's what it is?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So,
well, if you do resell, please do not put a sticker or a price tag on the cardboard.
Yeah.
Please don't do that.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating when you ruin the
Buy
cover.
a plastic sleeve and put it on the outside of the plastic for us who do care about what the cardboard looks like.
What the cover looks like. Yeah. Exactly. So anyway, all right. I don't even know where we are.
That was a pet peeve. I just had to get that out of the way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're drinking a good one tonight. This is one, actually, after Steve and I went on our record hunt, on that Monday, I went back over the weekend and hit a record show, but I was really close to one of my favorite breweries in Louisville, Atrium. I used to go, one of the owners of Atrium, Mark Rubenstein, used to swing by his house anytime I was in Louisville and would drink his homebrew in the kitchen. And I kept telling him, he was like, dude, you need to turn pro. And sure enough, he finally did, not at my prodding for sure. He had that in the works for a long time. But this one is a collaboration between his brewery, Atrium, and one of my favorite breweries out of Asheville, North Carolina, which is called Dissolver. But this is a West Coast IPA called Disco Lizard.
I do like the can.
Yeah,
it's
the
colorful.
can. It's got some great artwork. I'm a sucker for good artwork, and when the juice inside's even good, that's even better. This one's just a classic West Coast IPA. Well, I say classic, but then they put some twists on it. 100% Pilsner malt, which gives it a really dry, crisp finish.
It's very crisp.
But the aroma has I think it's kind of more of a hybrid. It's not quite so West Coast in that it's not all piney, forest floor like a lot of them are. This one does have a little bit of that, but it's got enough Citra hops and Simcoe to give you some citrus fruit, a little bit of berry notes. But then they also, and honestly, I had to do a little bit of research on this, but it has Waimea hop keef, which hop keef is a liquid, I guess, for lack of a better term, I don't know, distillation, but it's a liquid form of hop for them to add in the brewing process, as opposed to the hop pellets. So you get aroma and flavor without the physical vegetative matter, but it also, the hop keef does not add any sort of bitterness, so you get all the benefits of the aromas and the flavors of the hop without getting extra bitterness. So this one definitely, it kind of hits a lot of bases. There's a lot of citrusy. It does have a little bit of, there's a hint of dank, kind of weedy cannabis note there. It's not super prominent, but it's in there for sure. But yeah, I like it. Very crisp, very dry, but pretty awesome. So, which, I expected that to be the case with Atrium and Dissolver. They both do good stuff. So excellent beer, as I expected. So get out there and support your local breweries. If you're in the Louisville area, for sure. Atrium's one of my favorites. There's a bunch of good breweries over there though. So check everybody out. I can't pick on one for sure, but they're all good. So next week we're going to have 2 wins to talk about for Kentucky basketball.
Okay.
We're going to beat Oklahoma tomorrow. We're going to upset Auburn on Saturday.
Well, I hope Otega Owe has a bounce back because he's going back to Oklahoma where he played.
Yeah.
So it's important for him, obviously, on a personal note, but he needs to bounce back from that, obviously his worst game as a UK player at Alabama. Snap that streak of, 26 games?
End of the streak. Malik
of double
Monk's
figures.
streak is safe.
He's safe.
Yeah.
But more importantly, they need him to be downhill.
Yeah.
He had lost – it looked like he had lost interest in trying to score from the outside, from the perimeter, and then suddenly he found that game again. And he was key to a couple of those wins over the past month, and then throws in a clunker at Alabama.
Yeah. And the thing is, if we're still iffy on Jackson and Butler, we need to have Owe can't have any more disappearing acts for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot rely upon Perry and Noah and Chandler.
Yeah, they're going to give us some spot. They're going to give us some spot minutes, some brief highlights, but they're not going to give us the consistency that Owe gives us, and hopefully he'll, like you said, bounce back. So
hope so.
So anyway, next week we'll have that to talk about, and until then, we'll say the same thing we say every week. Watch some good games, listen to some good music, and drink some good beer, and eat some good food. See you next time.
There you go.